My name is Laura Shanti-Moreno, and I'm a professor at Brooklyn College. And today I'm going to speak about classroom management. Classroom management is really the foundation that all other instruction builds upon. If the principles of classroom management are not there, then teachers will find that they have trouble in doing all types of instruction. So I'm going to go over several components of classroom management, and I hope that will give you an overview of where to start with creating the classroom that you want for yourself. So the first thing I want to talk about is you have a lot of resources in order to create the ideal climate for learning in your classroom. The first step is really thinking about what is your vision? What does learning look like in your classroom? How do you want students to interact with each other? How should it sound like when children are doing independent reading? How should it look like when they're doing partner talk? These are questions that seem really trivial, but really are critical because if the noise is too loud, people can't concentrate. If children are walking around, they're distracted. So we really have to think about and create a very clear vision about what we want our students to look like, sound like, and how we want our classroom to feel. Unless we do that, then it's difficult to set the stage for learning. So some of the resources that teachers have on hand, one is sound, and instructing our students about sound is really important. The other is anchor charts, and this is thinking about the environment as the second teacher, thinking about seating, how our mini lessons are like, and behavior charts. And these are components that I'm going to go over today. So the first thing I want to talk about is having clear expectations about sound. And I'm a big believer in kinesthetic learning. Children need to feel and have an understanding through their bodies of what's expected. So this sound chart basically provides that for students. Under number 1, you'll see a pin, and you rehearse this with students. This is a pin drop. That means everyone's silent, and explain to students when this happens, for example, independent reading or when you're speaking. Number 2 is a hummingbird with a hum. This is when students are whispering, and you can practice that with students. Let's whisper to each other. The third one is a bee, and that's talking. The fourth one is singing, and the fifth one is a snake or screaming, and we would never scream unless a snake walked into our classroom or slid into our classroom. So this is a chart that should anchor discussions about, right now we're going to go into math. The classroom should sound like a buzz, number 3. And this is, if it gets too loud, you can stop the students and say, okay, are we talking or is it too loud? It's something that helps anchor the kids' understanding of what you expect from them. Another resource is anchor charts. Anchor charts really help focus students. If they forget what they're supposed to do, they can look at the anchor chart without asking you and interrupting your instruction or interrupting the point that you're going to make by just looking and visually getting an idea of what's expected of them. This is a chart that I took from a 5th grade classroom. When you hear the gong, stop, look, and listen. This is something that helps the class understand what's expected of them if they're an English language learner or if they have trouble focusing. They can look at this and say, okay, this is what's expected in our class. Seating is incredibly critical. When we seat our students, we give them a message of how we want them to work with each other. And we, for example, if the seats are in groups, we give the expectation that collaboration and cooperation is really important. It's also important to think about how the pathways are set up, how students walk from their seat to the meeting area or how they walk from their seat to the exit. These factors are important because when children take the wrong path and knock over school bags, etc., then they create unnecessary chaos. So when we think about seating, we have to think about how we're going to have our students seated, how we're going to think about, who sits next to who and for what reasons. Are we going to have some English language learners who are at the low level of proficiency next to English language learners who are at the high level of proficiency? This may help those students be more focused because you can have the students who are more proficient be able to speak to them? Are we going to have kids who are more rambunctious sitting with kids who are calmer and who are going to help them? We need to have a vision for how we think about seating. And lastly, the seating arrangement really says a lot about the classroom. It tells us, again, how students are expected to work with each other and how the teacher expects to teach the students. When alongside the environment are mini lessons. Mini lessons are a powerful way to support expectations. And they're a venue for teachers to teach students about their roles and responsibilities during a lesson. And we have to think about how we communicate this with students. So we can't just expect students to sit still during a mini lesson unless we teach them what that looks like. For example, if we hand out papers during a mini lesson, do we instruct them how they should keep their papers, if they should move them or not, how they should write on them? These are all aspects of the mini lesson that are important. And how do we make sure that students stay on track? So for example, if I pass out a paper during a mini lesson and I say, okay, keep the paper right in front of you, and some students don't do it, how do we ensure that they do it? So what are some things that we can say? For example, all students are instead of calling someone out, saying all students are expected to have their paper in front of them, or giving them a reason. When I shake my paper like this, it makes a lot of noise and people get distracted. So during our mini lesson, we need to think about how we insert direct instruction about how students are expected to behave and the reasons why. So here's an example about mini lessons with habits. So for example, the teaching point could be students will become familiar with how readers read during silent independent reading. And the teach could be, today I'm going to teach you how I expect you to read when you're at your desk. This is important because if everyone is going to read, then the room has to be quiet. And in this imaginary mini lesson, the teachers developed a poster, and the poster has a drawing of a child's reading during independent reading, and the kids discuss that. Another way of doing it is acting it out. So with these structures, sound, seating, anchor charts, and mini lessons, most of the class will get a clear idea of what to do, but there will always be struggling students. So what can you do? One thing is developing a goal for these students. So for example, if I have a student who's having a very difficult time with raising their hand, and this is a very simple, probably not one of the most difficult issues that you'll have, but with raising their hand, I would put the student's name, the goal. I need to raise my hand, I need to raise my hand when I'm in class or before I have to speak. Here, I put breakfast, so that doesn't really is not applicable. But taking out homework, for example, was I able to reach my goal? Yes or no. Morning meeting, was I able to reach my goal? Yes or no. And having a set goal, if you're able to do on the first day twice during the day, then that's excellent, and celebrate that. And slowly, increments, make sure that the student's able to do that more and more throughout the day. And this has to be communicated to parents and students so that everybody knows that this student is working towards this and for it to be celebrated. A last thing that I want to talk about is individual and group incentives. Something that's important is having the students understand how they're doing that day. So individual charts like this one on the side help students understand where they stand. And green is for doing great, yellow is for a warning, and red is that they haven't done what they're supposed to do in class. This helps students because you can say to kids, okay, I've given you a warning. You can go back to green, and this is what you have to do to go back to green. So for example, if a kid is yelling out all day in class, you can say to them, you're in yellow right now. In order to go back to green, in the next 10 minutes, you have to raise your hand, whisper, etc. The same thing for when students are on red. If students get to red, you can say, you need to get back down, and I'm going to develop a plan with you to get back down. So another important aspect are group incentives. Group incentives help, for example, when a table is all ready together or a whole class is ready together. And this I really love because it helps the group come together as a community. And that's something that's really important as a teacher, to have the students working together cooperatively and really realizing that when everyone works together, that there are benefits to that. And here you're showing their material benefits, but you can then talk about that there are other benefits as well. So here this teacher wrote, scooping our way to a special day. So when the whole class does something, for example, it's very quiet right before they're ready to go to lunch, or everybody has their backpacks on before and is quiet before they're ready to go. You can give them a scoop, or you can give them whatever, and then they can earn their way to doing something special for them, having 5 minutes extra of recess, or having some ice cream, or going on a community walking trip, something that they choose that's important to them. So students learn from these because they, for example, as I was speaking about before, if they get into the red zone and they get 3 strikes, then they process it. How can I not do this again? What can I do so it doesn't get to this level? What can I do differently next time? And they process it with you, which is really important, because they're developing a relationship with you and learning that, you know, everybody makes mistakes, and one way to take a different path is by talking about it. So they do get a chance for redemption. If we keep them on red every day, then the signal that we're giving those students is that they're bad and that we expect them to be bad, and there's no way out. And that's definitely not the idea that we want to give them. So we teach them how to get back into the green zone. And we teach them about what values help the group and are valued by the group: cleaning up, helping a friend when they fall down, sharing your snack, giving them, sharing books, being quiet when you're talking, keeping your body still so you're not bumping into people. All these important social skills that really keep the group together and make someone feel competent socially. The last thing I want to talk about is culture and classroom management. School is very cultural, and when we have students from different countries come into schools, it becomes even more salient about how different schooling can be like. So, you know, in some schools in different countries, children are expected to sit individually and be quiet the whole day. If a student who has experienced school that way comes into our schools, we may say that they're very quiet and what's wrong with them. Or in other schools, kids may be expected to talk all day, and we may think, why are they talking all day? So we need to think about what their expectation of school is, what their parents' expectation of school is, and communicate how this school operates, and incorporate students' cultures into the classroom. If we have children from different countries, how is that represented in our classroom? Is a sign that says welcome in all these different languages? Do we invite their parents to come in and talk about their culture? Do we interview them? How do we make sure that we're learning about the students in our classroom and it's a two-way relationship rather than school being a place where we're imposing American culture and American schooling, because sometimes that can create conflicts where there are problems with classroom management. So basically, lastly, it's important to have a consistent structure so kids understand what's expected to them in school. So just to sum up, classroom management is truly the foundation, and teachers are the authors of classroom management. They decide what vision they want and how the class is going to reach that vision, and they have many tools to work with. And we talked about some of them: sound, anchor charts, mini lessons, and behavioral charts. These are some ways that teachers can teach students how to work collaboratively and happily together in the classroom. I hope that this has been helpful, and thank you very much for listening today.